With 6 teams on bye this week, this is one of the most important weeks for our fantasy teams. So very, very important you stay and watch this video as Week 7 waivers on tap today en route to fantasy championships. But if you like fantasy football, this is going to be the channel for you. We drop 2 videos a week, from waiver videos to trade videos or to even start-sit options every Friday. We do everything here on the channel. So if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel on the road to 1,000 subs. But without further ado, this is the Anomaly Podcast. Let's start off with some quick Week 6 awards. Starting off here with Adam Thielen as the Fantasy Player of the Week. Again, I wanted to give this award so dearly to Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Sun God, but Adam Thielen is a guy that you drafted in the 6th to 8th rounds of your drafts, if not later, and he is producing like no other. 11 receptions, 115 yards, 29 fantasy points in full PPR leagues. Of course, the wide receiver 2 on the week. Adam Thielen continues to amaze despite the 0-6 record from the Carolina Panthers. But some honorable mentions. Amon-Ra, of course, as he was the number 1 wide receiver on the week. Travis Etienne, Raheem Mostert, as he was far and away the number 1 running back on the week. 34 fantasy points, making the most out of that situation there without Devon Achane. And Justin Tucker, a guy that we knew he's the first kicker off the boards in every league. But 19 points is 19 points, and that could win you your week on any given week. So those are some honorable mentions. Of course, there's some other guys like Ramondre Stevenson, who finally showed that he is a fantasy football player. At least you can have him on your roster at this point in the year. So shout out to Ramondre. He's another guy. On the flip side of things, we're going to talk about the guys that disappointed us this week. Most notably, George Kittle. 1 reception, 1 yard, 1.1 fantasy points. He was the tight end 50 on the week. That is not even a tight end 4 in 12-team leagues. George Kittle disappointed for sure, as even though he's not the number 1 option in this offense, you can do more than 1.1 fantasy points. You want to start him on a weekly basis because of the name value, because you know, hey, George Kittle dropped 27 points 2 weeks ago. You can't sit him on your bench against the Browns, and then he comes out here with 1 point in a full PPR league, given that too. So George Kittle is a very disappointing week, but some honorable mentions here. We have Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. Of course, they had quarterback issues. Dameon Pierce is struggling, and Calvin Ridley is one of the most disappointing receivers on a weekly basis, as he hasn't had that boom week. And I guess aside from week 1, he's been very underwhelming, and it's hard to start Calvin Ridley, but he's just like George Kittle. You have to start him because of the name and because of his potential, but he's not producing at the level that you think he should be. Moving over here to the waiver wire, though, we're going to start off at the running back position. And the guy I want to talk about that's not on this list is Devin Singletary. As we just mentioned, Dameon Pierce is struggling, and Devin Singletary is a big reason for that. Devin Singletary has been picking it up each and every week, and he is now getting more touches on a weekly basis than Dameon Pierce. So keep an eye on Devin Singletary as Houston goes into a bye. And, you know, if you need a running back, right now might be the time to pick him up. But on the flip side, we have the San Francisco backfield. Of course, the oblique injury there to CMC. We don't know what his future holds and if he's going to miss any time. But if he does, Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason might be a good 1-week rental to play in your lineups if you did have a CMC or if you just need a running back to win this week. As Elijah Mitchell, as of right now, has the reports to be the number 1 guy, but Jordan Mason last week was clearly the number 1 guy once CMC went out. And that's a large part of that's because Elijah Mitchell is dealing with injury as well. So Jordan Mason or Elijah Mitchell, it's kind of a flip of a coin. But I think Jordan Mason might be the pickup over Elijah Mitchell. But Kareem Hunt, of course, he's now the number 1 running back in Cleveland. You heard it here first. As Jerome Ford, I spent a lot of money of my fab on Jerome Ford due to the hopes that he would be the next guy after Nick Chubb. Of course, not to that level, but Jerome Ford to be a serviceable guy. Kareem Hunt has come in, and each and every week he's getting more and more touches and is now a 50-50 backfield. It's only a matter of time before the greatness of Kareem Hunt takes over Jerome Ford, and Kareem Hunt is the guy going forward for Cleveland. So Kareem Hunt, keep your eyes on him, as he's only owned in 36% of leagues, and that's a number 1 running back on a Cleveland Browns offense. So you want to get Kareem Hunt on your rosters if you haven't already. Some honorable mentions that aren't here, and these are guys that are owned in more than 50% of league. Tajay Spears, a guy that we've continued to mention, as if Derrick Henry goes down, he's going to explode, and he's going to be a very viable starting running back option, as we've already seen it. As if this Titans team is down in games, it is Tajay Spears' time to shine. But if this team is up, it is Derrick Henry's time to shine. So it's really Derrick Henry's just kind of past his prime, and Tajay Spears is on the come up. So Tajay Spears is a guy that's owned in more than 50% of leagues, but I would get him on your rosters. Other guys here are Ken Gainwell, as if Swift goes down, same situation. Ken Gainwell, as we saw in week 1, can be elite. At the wide receiver position, Josh Downs, Jameson Williams, Tyler Boyd, Rashee Rice, and Rashid Shaheed, with an honorable mention to Wan'Dale Robinson. As again, this is a guy we've mentioned each and every week. If anything, I think I should have Wan'Dale on this list, but I wanted to include these guys that are close to that 50% mark because it might be the last opportunity you have to get these guys on your rosters. Most notably, Jameson Williams, as again, this is the last opportunity you're going to have to pick him up, as he's the most important wide receiver on waivers in week 7, because this is a 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver with track level speed, maybe up there with a guy like Tyreek Hill, and he's slowly getting more and more involved in this offense, and that is really a scary sight. Now, let's be clear, he's not going to outproduce Amon-Ra on any given week, as Amon-Ra is the guy in Detroit, but he's definitely a nice pickup for the long haul, as if anything happens to Amon-Ra, or if the injuries continue to happen in the backfield of Detroit, this team will need to air the ball out more, and Jameson Williams could be the biggest beneficiary of that. So at the tight end position, Dalton Schultz, Jonnu Smith, two guys that top the list. Another guy is Michael Mayer, who drew comparisons to George Kittle coming out of Notre Dame, as Michael Mayer is finally being relevant in that Las Vegas offense. And it doesn't matter who the quarterback is over the last 2 weeks. Michael Mayer is getting the work, and he's getting more and more involved and more targeted throughout the last couple of weeks. So keep an eye on Michael Mayer. I'm not saying he's a pickup this week, but definitely sit on your hands with him, as in a week or two, you might have him on your roster. Tyler Conklin, Luke Musgrave, they're whatever, right? They're at the bottom of the list, just guys that haven't done much. But the guy I do want to highlight here is Dalton Schultz. 51% of leagues he's owned, and this is the last chance to get him, as over the last 3 weeks, I just want to kind of read these stats that Dalton Schultz has produced. He's the overall tight end 2 over the last 3 weeks, with 20 targets, 14 receptions, 160-plus yards, and 3 touchdowns. In fantasy full PPR, that is 13, 20, and 16 points, respectively, over the last 3 weeks. Young quarterbacks, in this case C.J. Stroud, they love the tight end position as a security blanket, and that's exactly why I had Dalton Schultz as the top 12 guy coming into the year. This is the last opportunity to grab him. So I would grab Dalton Schultz, especially if you have a guy like Jake Ferguson on by, just like in my case this upcoming week. At the quarterback position, not much to mention here. You see the names on your list. The only guy I would really mention here is a guy like Sam Howell, as he's had a really consistent good start to the year. He's had one bad week against Buffalo, but aside from that, Sam Howell's had a really good year against good defenses like Philadelphia. So if you're in a bind and you need a guy for this week, Sam Howell might not be a bad option to go with. Of course, if you're in a deeper league, a guy like Kyler Murray, keep an eye on Kyler Murray, as eventually he will return to the field for Arizona, and that will be always. He's a very exciting player to watch. So you can sit on your hands with Kyler Murray, but if you're in a deeper league, maybe like a 14, 16-teamer, Kyler Murray I would definitely pick up, and at the very minimum, again, use the IR spots that you have on your roster. That's why they're there. But that's going to do it here for today's video, as, again, each and every week we bring you guys these Week 7 waivers. I might start adding a Saturday video for you guys where we go through, or even a Monday video, where we go through and add trade targets for each and every week. As in most leagues, the trade deadline's either coming up in 2 weeks, or it's usually around that Thanksgiving mark, that Week 10 mark in your fantasy season. So for the next couple of weeks, I might add a trade video to the channel, so be on the lookout for that. But if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that good stuff on the road to 1,000 subs. But until tomorrow, where we have our Week 7 predictions, I'll see you guys then. Stay happy, stay healthy, and let me know what you're doing down in the comments.